you basically helped define the genres of horror for this book. This was incredibly helpful for me as well, just reading it, because I guess I just never really, I never had that kind of toolkit to figure out, okay, this is what I want to do if I'm trying to tell cosmic horror, or body horror, or slasher horror, or folk horror, which is probably the thing that scares me the most.
Oh, yeah, I love folk horror. So completely off of topic about this, we'll get to the genres that are covered in the book as well. But I saw one of the questions that you had submitted was, what are some of your favorite scary movies? And last night when I was just jotting down some thoughts to kind of get myself back into the headspace of this project, I ended up writing like a whole page about this treatise on genre and subgenre and what my favorite films were in each one and how they evoked those different subgenres and like what I would recommend based on what people liked. So genre is very top of mind for me, and how to evoke those genres, especially in tabletop games, I think is just a really fascinating question and a really fun thing to work through as a storyteller and a DM.
Yeah, this section in particular really helped me. And you're right. Like it's funny, the things. It's also interesting. Like some things will, for me personally, I have no problem with body horror if I'm running it, but I don't particularly like being on the other end of it for some reason.
No, that's true. And body horror is one of the things that like has really been very visceral for me, especially in the last like probably 5 or 6 years. I've really found myself being fascinated with body horror. And I think it does go back to that same fear of the unknown that I was talking about before. But there's a very real sense of the fear of one's own mortality, the fear of one's own body betraying yourself, right? And you don't know. That's the thing, is like your consciousness is stuck within your brain. You're seeing things, you're hearing things, you're experiencing the world through your cognitive functions. But when your body starts to do things that you don't understand, it's terrifying, right? It's terrifying to have that sort of thing. And preying on that fear and really exploring that fear and processing that fear in visceral ways to see other bodies changing into something horrible, or getting really like visceral and like sticky and gross, like in Cronenberg's The Fly. Pretty much any Cronenberg movie, there's all
right
everywhere, right? And there's just that primal fear of like, oh, what's coming out of my body? What's happening to me? Am I turning into Brundlefly? Like that to me has been really like fascinatingly gross over the last several years, and I'm sure it has nothing to do with the fact that I'm getting older and my own body is doing weird stuff.
The Fly still holds up too. It's still terrifying.
I love The Fly so much. It's one of my favorite movies.
Yeah,
in general is fantastic.
It is amazing. I think that another great example of body horror is Annihilation.
Oh yes, yeah, Annihilation is a very good film as well. There is another film, not like Annihilation, but closer to The Fly. It's called Mimic. It's from the 90s. I don't know if you've seen it.
It's
yes. Yeah, when it dealt horrors first. Yeah, and that's also terrifying. Just the idea that something that you thought might be human is not, or the fact that something that is like really keyed off of survival, like a cockroach, has sort of morphed and evolved into this thing that is now physically superior to humans and has got none of the morality of people, so therefore to just survive is going to do stuff like murder kids in a subway.
Also, for horror, such a good example of what is upsetting. Now, it wouldn't have been very upsetting if they got hit a final form where they looked exactly like humans. What was upsetting the most to me in that movie was that they kind of barely passed as human, in that you walked by and they looked like the silhouette of a man in a trench coat.
Yeah, in a trench coat.
Yeah, but once you saw their faces, like, and it's kind of commentary on how much people don't pay attention to each other. That something like this could be walking amongst you because you're not making eye contact. You're not looking deeper into something.
Yeah, I think that's also a visceral human fear, right? Is just sort of the fear that something that you should have been paying attention to something in your environment, and the fact that you're not is what has actually caused your doom, right? I think that's a really fascinating thing, because that's actually part of the plot of the Mimic, is that there were these genetically engineered cockroaches, right?
Mhm.
And that was what ended up stopping this plague, I think, and keeping kids from getting sick. And then turns out that the cockroaches that were genetically engineered then evolved and evolved and evolved and evolved and became these gigantic person-like murderous bugs.
Right.
That's horrifying, because people weren't paying attention and nobody knew that that was going to happen.
Are there any other tenets of body horror that you think there are? Because obviously there's a lot of different stuff there. I mean, we've talked about like what happens when you don't know what's going on with your own body. When you're facing a monster that is body horror, like The Thing.
Yeah.
What other torments are there potentially, and what other like adventure hooks do you advise on? Because again, you created this entire framework for these are the genres. Like what else is missing in body horror?
I think so. We've talked about creatures that seem to be human but turn out that they're not, and those are the villains and the monsters. But I think sort of the opposite is also true as well, which is something that we absolutely explore in Lamordia. Something that was once human has now been corrupted and warped and has become the monsters, right? So Viktra Mordenheim is all about that. In fact, there's a character named Elise who is very important in the Lamordia write-up, and that is how her and Dr. Viktra Mordenheim met, because she was actually a body snatcher. She was doing the sort of classic, and I'm very inspired by the Victorian body snatchers, who were stealing things for the medical college.
Resurrectionists.
Yeah, absolutely, right. Stealing corpses out of graves, basically, and taking them to medical colleges and selling them so that they can be used as education, right? The idea of education, very noble, but the fact that you're stealing people's bodies and just kind of violating that sanctity is absolutely horrifying. And so based on that, that's the type of amoral individual that Elise was. She was then bringing all of those, all the bodies, and sort of participating in this flesh warping, and that's how her paths crossed with Dr. Mordenheim. And it turns out that did not work out well for her at all. But yeah, so I do think that something that was once human being transformed into something just absolutely viscerally horrible, and then set loose upon unsuspecting individuals by somebody who has thought that they've become God, who has thought that they could create something that's perfect and beautiful. And the warped sort of concept of that is something that is part of body horror, and is also part of Lamordia as well.
If you want to watch more videos on Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, we've got a whole lot more coming up. If you want to support the channel, you can check out the Amazon affiliate link in the description and purchase the book, or just like, subscribe, share with your friends, and leave some comments down below. I love talking about Ravenloft, so I'm going to keep doing it. I hope you guys are having a great day. Thank you so much for watching.